everybody, and welcome to another Bleach chapter review hosted by me, Shimigami X. First off, let me get rid of this thing. Yeah. Hello guys, it's me, Captain X. Sorry, I should say. You know, now that I think about it, this is the first review that I've done as, as a captain. So okay, let's get into this thing straight away. But before we get into this, let's run the clip of the day. Alright, bam! Alright, now, let's get into this review. This is Bleach chapter 537, titled Everything But the Rain, opening 10. Alright, so now let's get into this chapter. Okay, the chapter starts out with Ishin explaining to Ichigo that, his mother, Masaki Kurosaki, was not meant to die that day. The night when the day, I should say, when Grand Fisher attacked her and she died in front of Ichigo. Alright, the panel then shows like an image of, Masaki laying on top of Ichigo like she's dead. Like just being killed by Grand Fisher because Grand Fisher went to attack Ichigo, as we all know from, previous chapters and from the anime itself. Alright, now, what then happens is that Ichigo, obviously curious, is wondering how, why, and then Ishin goes on to explain about a folk, like an old Quincy folktale an old Quincy folktale and it consisted of a king, and said this king was a sealed king, and that basically, after 900 years, he would regain his heart. After 90 years, he would regain his powers, his intellect. Then after 9 years, he will regain his powers. And the way he regains his powers is by absorbing, the powers of half mixed-blooded Quincy's. And he asked Ichigo, did Ishida Uryu ever explain about his mother? And then he was like, no. Uryu's never been one to talk about them kind of things. And okay, basically, then Ishin explains to Ichigo that Katagiri died, basically because she was weak as it was, like she probably wasn't well, we don't know, it doesn't exactly hint as to what, but then her powers were absorbed and taken away from her, so then she died about 3 months later. So Ichigo looks shocked. Then what happens next is we see him telling him about what happens to Masaki. Although Masaki is a pure-blooded Quincy, like by nature, and she was fused with the Hollow, so her powers were taken. So Ishin does state to Ichigo that he wishes that he could have protected his mother, but it's not that he couldn't protect his mother, it's that he chose not to. And obviously Ichigo's looking like, what the hell, what do you mean? Like, naturally, like, why wouldn't you protect her? But then he goes on to almost contradict himself by saying that, at the time he had no powers, as we all know. So him going there wouldn't have made a difference, but he still would have tried to protect Masaki, even if he was completely powerless. Just because that's his wife. So he also explains to Ichigo that basically another reason why Masaki shouldn't have died against Grand Fisher is that Masaki's blood venet is very, very strong, even amongst Quincy's. Even though she's a full-blooded Quincy and she gains this naturally, that she shouldn't have died against Grand Fisher. He also explains that blood venet, he explains to Ichigo about the technique blood venet, and that how full-blooded Quincy's are born with this, half-blooded Quincy's can attain this through training. Alright, what we then see is that, we move on into the chapter now, and he explains that, the reason that Masaki died because Grand Fisher shouldn't have even been able to scratch her. He should have been no match for her. But the reason she died is because this king basically absorbed Masaki's powers, and explains that, you're probably wondering, who is this king? This king is Yuhabak. And then he also goes on to explain that, he is the creator of Quincy's. All Quincy's extend from him. All Quincy's have his blood. Then there's a panel changes where Ichigo's remembering his confrontation with Yuhabak when he fought him in the Soul Society. That after he broke out of what's his name again? Kurge's jail. He explained to Ichigo that, Kurge's jail cannot seal Quincy's. After his sword was broken by Hashwald's, that, heal your wounds and wait here. My son, born in the dark. So, Ichigo's remembering this, knowing that he's part of Quincy, he called him his son. As everybody explained before, as I've said before, this is probably a figurative manner. He meant that in a figurative way, and it's clear to see that now that it's been revealed in the chapter. What then happens next is that the panel changes to I believe it's Vanderich, basically the home base of the Star Knights and Juhabak. And then we see Hashwaltz, like in like a very darkened area, after we see the image of Juhabak sitting on his throne. He then says, you know, "Oh, it's you, Hashwaltz. Have you brought the subject?" And Hashwaltz replies, "Yes." I believe he says, "Yes, Your Majesty." But then the panel changes, and this is the end of the chapter. We see an image of Ishida Uryu standing. He's holding something in his hand. It looks like a cloak of some sort, but he's standing and he's wearing a completely different uniform to what we've ever seen him in before. And then the panel changes. We don't know who says this as well, but he says, "So I'll fight alongside you." I believe that's Ishida saying this, Ishida Uryu, but it's not exactly clear because you don't see the speech mark next to the side of his head. It's in complete blackness. All right, then. The last panel is like you see Ishida standing there, Ishida Uryu, and then it says, "My son, no, the Prince of Light." Okay, and that was the end of the chapter, guys. Alright, now into the review side of things. Captain X style. You know how this goes. Alright, now, I think this week's chapter was a very, very, very good chapter. Very interesting, very, you know, a lot of confirmation in this chapter. Alright, first off, we see the instance of why Masaki died. We know that because a lot of people called this, that, you know, it's a bit weird for Grand Fisher to be able to defeat her because Grand Fisher is just a normal basic hollow. And then, even I said this in my last chapter review, that, you know, it seems a bit strange how Grand Fisher could take out Masaki. When Masaki took out the white Vastolorde type hollow Shimigami thing, you know, with one blow, with a miniature like Quincy bow and arrow. So that was a bit strange how she couldn't take out Grand Fisher. But now we see why. It's because her powers were absorbed by Juhabak. And you know what? I like how Kubo's done this. It links in with everything that he said previously. So you can almost see that it was like he does a lot of foreshadowing, and it's very good. Like, for example, when we're back in the Soul Society, when Yamamoto was still alive before his final moments, he stated that, you know, he fought Juhabak about 1,000 years ago, and he was unable to defeat him with his Bankai. You know, and Juhabak remembers his Bankai being very different, being one big burning slash that releases all his flames at once. So it would make sense and it would tally up with the legend behind the Quincy's that says, you know, 900 years he will regain his heart. 90 years he will regain his, 90 years he will regain his intellect. And then 9 years he will regain his power. That totals up to be a total of 999 years. So it adds up in terms of the time frame. What else I thought was pretty good as well is that, you know, before I made a prediction that, you know, I thought Juhabak would be, you know, the father of Masaki. Then I thought that's how, you know, he meant that. I thought that's how Juhabak meant, you know, the whole son born in the dark business. So, 1 second, guys. The camera's about to die. Sorry about the jump cut, guys, but now let's get back into the review. Basically, the reason this happens is because I, like, basically use my camera for other things than making YouTube videos, like photography and whatnot. But in future, I'm going to charge the, you know, the battery of this thing before, you know, I get into my video so that this doesn't happen again in future. Anyways, moving on, guys. Okay. Like I was saying about, you know, Juhabak and Ichigo being the son born in the dark. I took that and made a prediction saying that, you know, Masaki is somehow related to Juhabak. Like I said, that, you know, Juhabak may even be the grandfather of Ichigo, like on his mother's side. And you know, in a sense, I was wrong. In a sense, I wasn't wrong, because we now see from this chapter that all the Quincy's are related through the blood of Juhabak, and that he can, you know, call back his powers whenever he so chooses. So, bearing that in mind, they are somewhat related. So, in a sense, I was wrong, and in a sense, I wasn't wrong. So, I've got to give myself props to that, you know. Captain X, give myself a round of applause, you know. Respect me, man. Alright, now, back into my review and my thoughts and opinions. Now, we see Ishida Uryu. Yeah! That was the big shocker for me. That was the biggest shocker for me, that, you know, Uryu has now joined the side of the Quincy's. But you know what? I guess it's somewhat to be expected, because, you know, Uryu has always been Ichigo's rival. He stated from the very beginning that, you know, Shimigami and Quincy are enemies. We're not friends. Like, you know, he always looked at Ichigo as a rival. And I guess the only reason he didn't take Ichigo down is because he couldn't. And, you know, he slowly started to become fond of him. But we can see that Juhabak has naturally a strong influence over the Quincy's. As, for example, he can recall his powers back at any time. So, it's hard to see. Is Ishida Uryu going to be a double agent in this? Like, you know, is he going to suddenly backstab, you know, Juhabak and, you know, eventually fall by his hands? Or is he fully gone and blown and betrayed Ichigo and all the captains of the Gote 13 and the Soul Society and all his friends, such as, you know, Orihime, I don't know if he classes Kisuke as a friend, but Chad, Ichigo. Is he going to betray all of them, or is he going to work as double agent? In my opinion, I don't think he's going to betray all of them. I think he's going to work as double agent. But he's going to do it so convincingly that, you know, even Ichigo himself is going to think that, whoa, Ishida, like, Uryu, you betrayed me. And, you know, he's going to end up fighting him and whatnot before he fights Yhwach. Now, I'm finally glad to see that we're out of this flashback. But you know what? I did like the flashback, you know, the whole everything but the rain segment, because I think it done its job effectively. It had to explain, you know, the relationship between Ishin and Misaki. And it explained, you know, about Uryu's dad, you know, Ryukin, and, you know, his mother, and how Ichigo came to be about. It also done a good job of explaining how, you know, the Quincy's are linked with Yhwach, and how, you know, Misaki died that day, because we all knew, we all thought it was a bit fishy how she could take out this hollow, but then Tutu, she losing to Grand Fisher, who's just a basic any hollow. Like, even when he was on Aranka, he was taken out in quick succession by Ishin, who only recently just got back his powers. So, I guess, if I was to make a prediction about the next chapter, I'd say that, yeah, this everything but the rain segment is over. It's over. I truly think it's over. And I think now, Ichigo is going to go through the proper method of training. Seeing as how he left, you know, his dad's, like, his dad's house and bumped into, what is her name again? Ikumi, the person he works for, you know, his employer, and he got his soul reaper pass, his soul combat pass back, you know, this thing right here. Yeah, he got that back. So, he's probably going to go back to the Soul Society. Probably going to try to, you know, get his Zangetsu fixed, because now that he's learned about his past. But I don't think it's going to be that easy. I think Ichigo is going to have to go through some serious, intense training. Because if you guys remember, when he fought Yhwach, he was quite clearly outmatched in terms of power. He was fully angry. Okay, fair enough, he was weakened. We know that because he had to push his reactor to the extreme to break out of Kurge's jail, which damaged his body. But when he, like, came to fight Yhwach after he threw his Tensei in the ground, you know that epic scene where he's like all badass like that? Yeah, you know that epic scene. So after that, he fired a Getsu Tensho at, you know, Yhwach, where Yhwach quite bluntly just put his hand straight through it, grabbed Ichigo, pinned him to the floor, stabbed him in the neck. The only reason Ichigo survived is because it is Quincy heritage using blood of an A. And then, you know, how he explained, yeah, you've all seen the chapter. So, and then how Hashirama himself, you know, just broke Tensei Zangetsu in one swing. And, you know, we all know that, you know, what's his name again? It's been so long since I've seen him. Oetsu Nimaya explained that, you know, a Zanpakuto is easily broken when it's not shown love and attention by, you know, its own master. Which Ichigo quite bluntly doesn't do. He doesn't use Jinzen. He doesn't ever sit down and talk with Zangetsu unless he's in trouble. So, now, I think Ichigo's going to go through some proper methods of training. I don't think he's going to learn Kido, but I think he's going to learn techniques about, you know, his Quincy heritage somehow. But it's obviously not going to be from, you know, Uryu. So, it makes me wonder how he's going to, you know, develop his Quincy powers, because he inevitably will. The main protagonist will always have, you know, character development. But yeah, hey, I guess that's my thoughts for today, guys, you know, about this review. So, you know, this is me, Shimigami X. Hope you've enjoyed this review today, aka Captain X. Before I go, next week, Wednesday, on my next chapter review, I'm going to be, you know, announcing my 2 lieutenants, you know. Like, I've had a lot of people, you know, put in applications for the position, but I'm going to be announcing my 2 lieutenants. Alright, applications are still open and welcome, like, I'll be taking applications up until the Tuesday. After then, I'll make my decision on the Wednesday, and you guys will know shortly. But, I guess it's me, I'm signing out, take care, and actually, no, I'm going to say see you later, because I've got another video coming out today. You know, I've got another special video coming out for my subscribers. This video was requested by many of my subscribers, so I'm going to be doing this due to popular demand. But anyway, signing out. Peace.